Hey guys, good evening, all of you.
Good evening, sir.
इससे रो के बोल रहा है गुड इवनिंग सर. थक गए हैं
Hi
ना.
Da, good evening.
हाय गुड मॉर्निंग. Hey guys, so in the last classes we have done with the concept of not done. Okay, we were discussing about the trunking, right? And we have done with the encapsulation protocol, the 80.1q and ISL, right?
Yes.
Yep. So 80.1q, just a quick review, right? 80.1q, the protocol is a size is a 4 byte. At the same time, we have ISL over there. This is the Cisco proprietary, and this guy is the 26 byte is a header over that, and then after that we have a 4 byte of FCS, right? So total is 30 byte. 30 byte of extra header to the Ethernet frame, right? In this case, was just a 4 byte of header to Ethernet frame. That's it. So this is the main difference, and the 80.1q is the IEEE standard, and even the Cisco recommendation to use the 80.1q protocol, not the ISL. By default, on the Cisco devices, ISL is enabled. By default, on a Cisco device, ISL is enabled. Okay, so you don't need to enable this you don't need to enable. You just need to go in the interface and just write on the command interface 0/0 switch for trunk in switch for more trunk. That's it. Automatically trunk will be formed because the ISL is enabled over there. And at the same time, we have discussed about like you can configure the trunk, right, in two ways. The first one, we have a static that we have seen, like we need to go in the interface gig 0/0 and say the switch port. Switch port means what? It's a way to interface. I need to define the trunk command over there, and then after I need to call this guy switch port. If you wanna change the encapsulation protocol, right, you can change it. This is the static way. Same thing, we have a dynamic way, right? In a dynamic, what happened, as we know that, like static routing, we have in a static routing, what happened, you need to manually define the command. How you're defining the static routing command over there? You said, okay, in the static route, you are telling this person, hey, IP route, I want to go to this network. That will be some network information. I need to use this next stop. But in dynamic routing, if you remember that, we have a EHRP, OSPF protocol, RIP protocol. Do I need to enable over there manually the route? No. You just need to, you just need to configure the take example. This is router number 1 and this is router number 2. Okay. And take example R1 and R2, and we have a 1.0.0.0/8 behind the R1, and we have a 2.0.0/8 behind the R2. And this network we have a 2.0/24. Take example in dynamic routing protocol, what happened after enabling the EHGRP, right? Automatically EHGRP, what EHGRP is going to do, this guy is going to exchange the update automatically. You don't need to do anything. That's a dynamic one. But in the static, what happened, you need to manually define the path. Hey, I want to go for this one. Same way in a trunk, what happened, you can form the trunk in two ways. One is the static and one is the dynamic over there. Once the dynamic comes in the picture, for the dynamic, we have a protocol, and the protocol called as a DT, dynamic trunking protocol. The first of all, the DTP, right? By default, first of all, the DTP is a Cisco providing protocol. Okay, it means that this protocol only run on Cisco device. Another thing about the DTP is that by default, DTP is enabled on all switch port interface. Hey guys, now you have to pay attention over there. I said that DTP is by default enabled on the switch port interface. एक मिनट दादा, एक मिनट right? Now, switch, what is the meaning of the switchboard over there, guys? The meaning of this line I'm talking about, the switchboard interface, it means that you have a access port where you have configured with the VLAN over there, right? Interface, like, put the command interface 0/0 switchboard access VLAN number 10 on this particular interface. At the same time, on this particular interface, switchboard mode trunk. On this both particular interface, what happened? Your DTP will be enabled. Understood what I'm trying to say that over there? You don't need to configure the DTP, right? By default, it's enabled over there. You're not going to configure the DTP. By default, it's enabled the DTP. You don't need to configure over there. It will dynamically form the trunk, right? This protocol helps you to configure trunk dynamically. You don't need to configure manually over there. In a manually, what happened? You need to go on the devices and the particular interface and you tell this, hey, I want to form the trunk like this. Let me define this thing, right? On both the interfaces, right? Take example, we have a what is that? We have a this is the switch one over there, and this is the switch two. Take example, and this is the interface we have. This is the interface that I'm going to make this interface as a trunk interface, and by default on the trunk interface, the native VLAN is 1. And this interface we have, I can call this guy as a 0/0, and we have a 0/0 over there as well as. Take example, switch one, switch two. Do you know what we have to do over there? I need to go on the particular interface 0/0. Interface, come on. Interface 0/0, and I need to call this guy as a switch port mode trunk. Same command, I need to define, over there as well as. This is the static way. And after that, what happened? Now you have a trunk that can carry the 124094 VLAN by default. By default is what? We can modify this thing as well as. This is the default behavior. But with the help of DTP protocol, what we can do over there, as we know that DTP is by default enabled, right? On this particular interface, DTP is present, right? This guy name is DTP, and this guy also name is DTP. This is present over there. But the thing is that if you remember that in your CCNA that you have learned in the EIGRP and OSPF protocol, when a router 1 is forming a neighborship with the router number 2, right? I'm talking about the neighborship. It has some criteria, right? It is something like that. Okay, take example. You are at the Bangalore airport and you meet a okay, and you are like, you are in the ideal state. Okay, you are like, your flight is totally delayed, almost the 5 to 6 hours, and you don't have any works, and you want to, like, you want to communicate with some other person. So how will you initiate your communication? You first need to go on the person side and say that, hey, hi, this is XYZ. If the other person is interested, right, And if other person will understand your language, maybe, right, might be the person belong to the different country, China, they don't know understand the Hindi or English, so you cannot communicate with that person, right? So what is the meaning of neighborship? Neighborship means what? The compatibility should be there. If you know the Hindi or if you know the English, the neighbor person, right, to whom you are communicating, they also understand your language. That's the meaning of neighborship. So same thing in the EHRP what and OSPF protocol, we have our neighborship criteria. Whatever the dynamic behavior, guys, we have, every dynamic one we have a criteria. Go for the anyone, just go for anyone routing protocol, any dynamic behavior, you have some criteria. And the criteria is what? In the DTP case, DTP has a modes. One is we have a auto mode, and one we have a desirable mode. What this mode is going to tell you over there, based on this mode, right, the switches is going to decide should I form the trunk or not. Based on this mode, switch decide should I form a trunk or not. If I talk about by default, see, DTP is enabled, right? Over there, DTP is enabled. If I talk about the default mode, the default mode on the most of the switches, right, you will find the auto. Most of the switches. But some switches, it's a desirable as well. So it's totally depend on the vendor wise. When if you have a look, let's do one thing. So go DTP. Good job. इसको प्रेस है इसमें मिल जाएगा. DTP Cisco ID protocol, right? As enable, and this one is our interested, right? See, auto mode is there and desirable mode, and see, this is the default mode. But if you go for the some other switches, right, maybe the older one switches, they have a desirable as well as. So if somebody will ask you, hey, what is the default mode of this DTP, so you just tell them it's totally depend on the platform basis. If you go for the the newer one, according to the Cisco, if you go for the newer one, it has a auto. But if the some has that's the older iOS is there, maybe some has a desirable as well as. Let's take example. Let me, I can check it over there in the Cisco packet trace so I can show you this information. Because I have older one. Let's see. And based on the mode, this guy is going to decide should I form the trunk or not. So let's take example. We have a switch over there. Which one, switch two? And by default DTP is enabled. And if you see one thing, let's check which mode is there. And meanwhile, I'll open the GNS3 as well as. So yesterday was topology was something called VLAN basic, right? And I'll have a look. So interface switch port 0/1 0/1. The interface is there. 0/1 here. So interface 0/1 switch port. It's an auto over there. Wait 1 minute. Let me check on this one as well as. Most of the switches you will find the auto, because all these are the newer one, but somehow you will find the older one as well as they have a desirable as well as a configure over there. So if somebody will ask you, you just need to tell the auto, and at the last end, you can add this point on the some devices on some iOS version, it has a desirable as well as. Even if you see that is mentioned over there somewhere, if you see the default switch port mode of the newer Cisco switches, right? Newer Cisco switches is the dynamic auto. It means that older one has a the desirable concept. Like me remove this. Interested. Not interested. Just to as last concept. Meanwhile, I'll explain you this mode over there. Now, so DTP mode is what? Based on this, I'm going to decide should I form the trunk or not. The default is auto, and it can be desirable as well as. What is the difference over there? See, you can understand this way. There's a guy over there, right? This guy name is Amit, right? Tanya. So try to understand. Amit has a Facebook account, right? Okay. So listen to me. Amit is behave like a what? Auto. Okay. And Tanya is behave like a what? Desirable. Okay. Now, so in this case, what happened? If Amit wants to communicate with the Tanya, hey, let's form the friendship with you, let's form the neighborship, they can't do that. Because the Amit is what? Auto. At the end of the day, what happened? This is the guy, right? They cannot initiate the communication from our side. From own side, he cannot initiate the communication. But in the desirable case, what happened? They consider, hey, Amit, he will send the request to the Amit on the Facebook. And what happened? Amit is what? This guy. He said, okay, let me accept this. And he will accept it, and he will form the neighborship. So desirable, the Tanya can initiate the request or trunk request, right? Hey, let's form the trunk. And Amit has to do that. Amit has to form the trunk because I can accept the information. But Amit cannot initiate, hey, let's form the trunk. They cannot do that because this guy does not have an ability. So auto means what? I just have an ability of negotiation. I can just negotiate it. But in the desirable, what happened, guys? I will have an ability to negotiate it at the same time, request it. Hey, let's form the trunk. So if you both the side now understand, if you're over there, if the switch one and switch to right, zero slash zero, switch one and come on, switch two. Now try to understand default mode is what? Auto. So I'll just make this guy as auto over there. Before I'm going to make this guy, let me have a screenshot of this person because I need to make otherwise next one. This one and this one and this one. Now understand over there. If this guy is auto, right? And if this guy is auto, what will be the result? If Tanya is also auto and Amit is also auto, they will in this ideal state. They cannot communicate because Auto means what? I can negotiate, I cannot request it. So this link will become the access port. It will never become the trunk port. Never ever. If this guy is auto, and if this guy is a desirable, he can request this person, hey, let's form a trunk, and they'll form a trunk. Now this interface will become the trunk over there. If this guy is a desirable, and if this guy is a desirable, I will have a result with the trunk. And if this guy is a desirable, and this guy is auto, also we have a trunk. Read this line. Switch port mode dynamic auto make the interface able to convert. It means negotiate it. Link into the trunk link. This interface become a trunk interface if the neighboring interface set to the trunk or desirable mode. The default mode is what? Never form the trunk. Whereas the desirable is what? Make the interface actively attempt or convert to the trunk link. The interface become a trunk interface if the neighboring interface set to the trunk or desirable or auto. I will form the trunk. Okay, now you can see that over there. I told you that this is the default switch port mode on the older switches. This was the new one. Okay, such as, so if somebody will ask you what is the different mode, you can explain like this, right? We have a two different default is auto and desirable, as well as it's totally depend on the platform. So you can just write on 2950 and 3550 series of switches. We have a desirable. All good. Anyone has a question, guys, till this point, ask me. At this point, if you have any questions, you can ask me. Otherwise, let me know. I can go in the little bit more detail of this part.
No law.
Awesome. Now, guys, one more point. DTP is a point-to-point protocol. What I told you that, come to this phase. DTP is by default enabled on the switch port interface. It means that access this interface and this interface. Matlab, switch, and this guy, and we have a this guy as well as. तो भाई साहब ये भेजेगा DTP का पैकेट यहाँ से ही भेजेगा. Come on. He will send the DTP packet from this interface up, and he will send the DTP packet from this interface as well as. And this DTP packet will send on the source will be a Ethernet MAC address, right? In the packet we have a source interface, right? So sorry, source MAC address will be a Ethernet MAC address, for example, A, and in this case we will have B over there, right? And destination MAC address will be multicast MAC address. मैं भूल गया multicast MAC 0180C2 something called as 0180C2 0000 ऐसा ही कुछ मुझे याद नहीं आ रहा, देख लेता हूँ. And in this DTP packet, guys, what information they will send, I'll let you know. Information you are going to send, this is the DTP packet, okay, like this, channel. You will have a domain name information. If you haven't configured, if you don't know about the VTP domain name, guys, it's just a part of the CCNA topic as well as, but if you don't know, leave it right now. Okay, by default, the domain name, if you don't have any domain name configured, right, I'll just write on in the small format. If you don't have You need domain name configure. By default, use null. Null means empty. ऐसा लिखा नहीं आएगा, null empty होगा. Then after that we have an information like मैं दिखाई देता हूँ ना यार, फालतू में टाइम बर्बाद होगा लिखने में मुझे, उसमें पड़ा हुआ. Capture was link out and have a look. By default DTP is enabled. मैंने कुछ configure, I haven't configured anything on so you can see सब कुछ नया है. Wait for some time. Yeah. The multicast address is what? अच्छा 0100C है. Sorry, it's my mistake. Domain name, trunk status, trunk type, sender ID. I'll explain this part. So let me do one thing. Let me take a screenshot. आजा पेंट किया, लिखने का कोई सेंस नहीं होना था, बड़ा अपना सब कुछ यहाँ पे information. So this is the multicast MAC address, right? That is reserved for the CDP, DTP, BTP, PAGP, ULD, and this is a source MAC address, right? The user MAC address. The user, not user, switch interface MAC address. Multicast MAC address. Why I'm sending the multicast MAC address? Because I don't have an idea of the neighbor switches, right? That's why I'm sending the multicast MAC address. The reason is sending the multicast MAC address because I don't know. I don't have aware about my neighbor switches, right? The switch one not aware about the switch two. That's why I'm sending a multicast address. Then after that, we have a dynamic trunking protocol, right? The which version I'm going to use, the version number one I'm going to use over there, DTP version 1. And after that, we have a domain. Do we have any domain name over there? If you have a domain name, then you will have a some value over there. Right now, by default, the domain name, by default, the BTP domain name is null. This is the BTP domain name. That's why we don't have any, because I haven't configured any domain name. Then after that, we have a trunk. I will show you in the BTP part, this part again, no worry. And we have a trunk status is what? If you see over there, I'll do one thing. Yeah. If you see trunk status, just open this value. We have a auto, and it can be desirable as well as by default it's auto is there, and it's in the operating status. So there's two statuses happening. Let me do one thing. I'll take a screenshot. I'll explain this part again. And I'll take a screenshot and put it out there. In the trunk status, what happened? It will show you, right, which mode is operating right now. I'm operating with the auto mode, right? So what will be the result of this guy? The result of this guy will be access port, because switch 1 and switch 2 both are running with what? Switch 1 and switch 2, right? Both are running with the auto port and auto port. So result will be what? Access. Default mode is what? Administrative mode means what? Understand the meaning. Administrative means this is defined. Admin, a network engineer can change it. Operating means what? What is the result? Understand? Operating is what? In which mode I'm operating. Result. Administrative is what? I can define it, I can change it, it's up to me. Then after that, we have a trunk tab, right? Trunk tab, if you have a look over there, it can be a ISL or it can be a negotiated. So इसका भी screenshot लो. इसको मान लिया. अच्छा. Trunk operate, what I told you, the by default, the mode is what? Sorry, by default, which protocol I'm going to use for the encapsulation? ISL. If you see, I haven't configured anything. Can you see that? Nothing is there. Just a normal switch right now. I just open the switch. Even I haven't go move in the config mode over there right now. So normal switch. I haven't configured anything. So do we have a trunk between there switch 1 and switch 2? Of course not. Right? Because both is the auto, both side is auto, right? If you see switch 1, show interface, what we call gig 0/2, I think so, and switch port. Huh? Yeah, yeah. So if you see over there, what is the mode over there? Administrative mode is auto, right? Switch 1. If you see the same information on the switch 2, what is the mode is happening? Auto. So switch 1 is also running with the auto, and switch 2 is also running with the auto. So what will be the result? Access mode. And which protocol by default is enabled? The by default, the protocol will be enabled is a ISM. You can change with the 80.1q as well as, but default is what? ISM. And the next point is that it's a negotiated, right? Remember yesterday we have seen, let me show you this part. Port, mode, trunk, or a wrong name. Switch port trunk, switch port trunk encapsulation, negotiate. What is the meaning of negotiate? Device will negotiate the trunking encapsulation with the peer on interface. Here's a problem. Device will negotiate trunking encapsulation with the peer on the interface. This one, here's a problem. Device will negotiate the trunking encapsulation with the peer on the interface. मतलब ये हुआ. Switch 1, switch 2. If I have configured on this side is the ISL, right? They can negotiate with the ISL. If I'm going to configure this side is a 80.1q, they can negotiate with the 80.1q. That's when a device will negotiate the trunking encapsulation with the peer on interface. And default is what? Negotiate. Default is what? Negotiate. If you see somewhere, someday, that's why he's sending the negotiating process. And the last but not least, who is sending this DTP packet? This DTP packet will be sent by the sender ID, the interface MAC address. So if you see over there, switch 1 and switch 2, right now we don't have an internal, right? Because both interfaces are auto and auto. I'll do one thing. I'll go on the gig 0/2 now, this interface, right? And what I'm going to do, I see that interface gig 0/2 switch port trunk encapsulation dot one q, not dot one q. Yeah, dot one q. And I'm going to tell this person switch port mode dynamic desirable. So if I'm going to configure this person is a dynamic desirable and this guy is auto, they will form the trunk. Did I define the command switch port mode trunk over there? I just changed the ISL to the dot one q, but reason is because ISL is not recommendation to use, right? So I just changed the encapsulation type dot one q. Even this command is not necessary. Only this command is sufficient. If you want to use the ISL, only this command is important, not this one. But if you want to change the encapsulation type, you can change it. Did I define any command regarding the switch port mode trunk? No, I haven't configured. I haven't configured this command switch port mode trunk. Right? If you see, do show interface trunk. I have a trunk over there. And what this guy saying that the mode is what? Which encapsulation? I'm allowing all the VLAN. Trunking is a native VLAN one. And if you see on the switch one side, okay, sorry, I have configured this side as a desirable and this side as auto. If you see on the switch one side, sync command, show interface trunk, you will see the one thing over there. On a switch 2, I just have encapsulation 80.1q, right? So he's sending the request, hey, let's form the trunk. What is the behavior of switch 1? Negotiate. Can you see that? And the mode is what? Auto. If you see the switch 2 side, the mode is what? Desirable. And I don't have any encapsulation in any of them because I have manually configured this switch 2. But switch 2 is sending the request to the switch 1. Hey, let's what switch 1 is going to do? It's negotiating. And if you see the show interface, gig 0/2 switch port, what this guy saying that, hey, administrative mode is the switch auto over there, this guy, and operational mode is what? Trunk now. My encapsulation type is a negotiate. Let's do and let's copy this part till this point. Okay. And I'll paste in the this is the switch one information. And if you see the switch two now, same information. I'll just trying to clear the the complete concept of this part, like how this thing is working, because many people forget this part, right? And it's really hard to understand. If you see switch two desirable and the switch one is what? Auto. Operational mode is what? Trunk. And of course, both, so we have a trunk over there. Administrative mode encapsulation dot one q. This side is switch one is saying, hey, I will negotiate it because by default negotiate is happening. And operational trunking encapsulation what? Dot one q and dot one q. And by default, DTP is enabled. This is going to represent that DTP is enabled. यार मुझे याद नहीं आ रहा है कि व्हाट इज द डिफॉल्ट टाइमर ऑफ डीटीपी। आई थिंक सो 30 सेकंड इज डिफॉल्ट टाइमर। चेक हो गया इसमें व्हाट्सएप में। 30 सेकंड होता है डिफॉल्ट टाइमर डीटीपी पैकेट्स का। बाय डिफॉल्ट दे आर सेंडिंग द डीटीपी पैकेट्स ऑफ 30 सेकंड। डायनामिक रनिंग प्रोटोकॉल कितने पे गया? 560। वेट करो। 884। 884 and 560। अच्छा टाइम ही है 884। 30। रोते हुए हर बात में आंसू। ठीक है भाई 34 ही है 30 है। डन। Now you can also verify some commands are there, right? Show DTP, you know, and you can call this guy as a yeah, I can say that sending hello packet in the 30 second, and the dynamic turnkey timeout is 300 second. Hold on time, you can say that hello time and a hold on time, like that's EIGRP. So if the route, if the switch 2 will not receive any DTP packet from the switch 1, they will drop the reverse after 300 second. Hold on now. 5 interface, the DTP is enabled right now. So we see 5 interfaces. ये हो गया 4 अब 5 एक ट्रंक भी हो गया ना। So total 5 interface. And if you show DTP interface, right, you can see that the same information, how many packets I have sent, right, and how many packets I have received, the toss, TAS, TNS, and toss, TAT, TNT. The same information, right? The toss means what? Toss means toss means trunk operating status. So what status is happening? My toss trunk operating status, that is the access port, and the task means what? Trunk admin status. Okay, that's auto. Just sorry. Hello. हेलो। आप हम कॉल कर रहे हैं Alexa disconnect iPhone. So now you can see that TNS is what? Trunk negotiation status. It will negotiate what the access port is happening, and the same thing TOT is a trunk operating tab. Same thing that we have discussed in the no, in one. I'll do one thing. I'll share this file to you guys. If you want to have a look, you can. Dropbox. I'll upload this file in in the drive. So if you don't have, it's just a small notes of the DTP, you can have a look on that. So these are the commands. So same meaning is the toss task that we have explained in the Wireshark. Same meaning is there, nothing else. So no need to waste the time over there. They will show you just how many packets I have sent and how many packets I have received. So now all interface the DTP is enabled, right, by default. Now tell me one thing. Now tell me one thing. Which one you are going to prefer? Static one or dynamic one? Which one you are going to prefer? Static one or dynamic one?
Dynamic.
Two.
Because we go.
Guys, do you know why dynamic is not recommendation to use? The reason I'll tell you. First of all, DTP protocol, the dynamic is the DTP is a Cisco quality protocol. Take example, if you have a third party of the switch, then switch one and Nokia switch, then Cisco and Nokia. Dynamic हो जाएगा? Will dynamic work over there? नहीं होगा ना? It will not work, right? Not a good solution. सेकेंड पॉइंट, कितने बाइट्स का पैकेट है ये? The size of DTP is 60 bytes, including the Ethernet as well. So 60 byte is happening over there. So 60 byte का पैकेट में भेज रहा हूँ. 60 byte of packet I'm sending at every 30 seconds. Wastage of bandwidth and wastage of resources as well as CPU and memory. Third thing is that the first, in the third party we have issue, right? Third party in the sense of what? Nokia, different vendor of the switches according to the system. That is called as a third party. Second problem, wastage of bandwidth. Third problem, attack. Call as a DTP attack. पहली सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत है DTP में. The first and biggest issue with the DTP protocol. DTP packet is not a, you cannot authenticate DTP packet. जब तुम authenticate ही नहीं कर सकते हो DTP packet के साथ, तो कोई भी बंदा अटैक कर सकता है. Take example, switch one, right? And this is my own company switch, right? Own company switch. And this interface we have. So what happened? This is the attacker comes in the picture. And on this particular interface, what happened? The company said the DTP is, on this particular interface, DTP is enabled. Doesn't matter what mode is there. Doesn't matter. Okay, it's matter नहीं करता कौन सा मोड है. मान लो switch 2 आया, ये अटैकर था, और अटैकर ने क्या किया, अपनी साइड पे डिजायरेबल लगा दिया. Attacker will send the request, hey, let's form the trunk. What they will do? They will form the trunk. So now whatever the VLAN information they have, whatever the things they have, right, they can easily perform the attack in your network, right? Trunk बन गया, form करेगा, attack कर लेगा वो. They can do the attack, right, in your network. Because DTP is enabled, right? And you cannot authenticate the DTP packet. Understand? Second issue. This is the attack on the trunk interface. Switch one, switch two. This is my genuine company. This is my genuine, legitimate devices are there, and some user are sitting over there. Right? Some user are sitting over there. They are my legitimate user. As we know that DTP is enabled on the LAN interface as well as. So what happens if the attacker comes in the picture with the PC, and with the help of Kali Linux, you can advertise the DTP packet. And take example, there's an interface connected over there. He will send it, because on this interface also DTP is enabled. Auto mode is there. What happened if this guy will send the DTP request? Hey, let's form the trunk. What happened? This guy will accept it and form the trunk. Now attacker comes to your network, and they will form a trunk over there. They can perform any kind of attack in your network. Any VLAN they can perform attack. This is called as a DTP attack. That's why it's recommendation, right? It's recommendation to disable DTP. How do I disable the DTP? If you not disable the DTP on the trunk interface, right? If you not disable the DTP on the trunk interface, you just need to go on the 0/0. One more thing I want to discuss with you before I'm going to this part. So I have a trunk right now, and I'll do one thing. Also, we run brief. We run our 10, or I'll say the interface gig 0/ switch port trunk native VLAN. मैं 2 मिनट पे आया. Hey, I'm sorry. Actually, my eyes were burning. Now I can see the one thing over there. What happened? I have a what we call over there. This guy has a VLAN number 10 on the native VLAN, the switch one, and switch 2 has a native VLAN different. Show interface trunk. I have a trunk over there, right? But the native VLAN mismatch is coming over there, right? So you will have a trunk, right? But the native VLAN will be mismatched, and that will not create the issue. They will just, they will just giving the pop up the message over there. And even sometimes, one more thing I want to discuss. Let's take example. I'll say that, what we call over the VTP domain name, CCNA, right? And this guy's a VTP domain name, CCNP. The domain name had changed. Now just wait for some time. Okay, let me give some math. So then meanwhile, I'll teach you this part, right? So it's recommendation to disable the DTP. Now, two things is happening, guys. You can disable the DTP on the trunk interface as well as on an access port as well as, and both have a different command. If you disable the on a trunk interface, you need to go on the interface gig 0/2 switch port and see that no negotiate. This command disable the DTP. And this is the most important interview question, guys. The DTP part is very, very important for the interview. Very, very important. On a trunk interface, right? If you not disable the DTP, this is a command for the trunk interface. If you not disable the DTP, right, on an access port, you need to go on the interface 0/0 and say the switch port, right, mode access. I know, guys, you have learned this command in your CCNA, right? And I haven't discussed this command in the first day of the lecture. Do you know why? The reason is that I want to include this command into the DTP attack. The meaning of this command is making this interface is a access port, and it forcefully, listen, forcefully, I'm setting this guy, hey, you are the access port. It means that you never ever become trunk. So by making an access port, right, by putting this command, actually what happened in the background, you are disabling the DTP. So both have a different possibility. If you want to use the, on the PC side, if you want to disable the DTP, you can use this command. And that's why it's recommendation to use like this command, right? Whenever you're using the command line, you're actually using like this interface 0/0 switch port mode access and switch port access VLAN number 10. This command make the interface as a part of VLAN number 10, and this command make the interface as a access. Both have a different meaning. Many people's using this command and they don't have any idea. The meaning of this command, you are disabling the DTP on the particular port. Can you see that over there? What message they are giving? DTP 5. I'll explain you this thing later on. What is the meaning of percentile over there, right? This percentage sign. What is the meaning of 5 over there? What is the meaning of this line? I'll explain you later on, not now in the different lecture. And if you see unable to form the trunk negotiation on this guy, which was because of the VTP domain mismatch. So now if you see do show interface trunk, do we have a trunk over there? This trunk is there. Okay, unable to form the trunk negotiation. Should be not formed, right? It should be like, it will create issues over there. It's not giving the proper output. I have to form the, it should be not create, right? So in that case, what happens, you can, if you don't want to get this masses, and if you want to form a trunk between the these two domain name, in that case also you need to disable the DTP. If you now form the trunk, right, it's not giving the proper. एक minute ago. एक minute. Meanwhile, I'll do one thing. I'll show you this command. Like disabling the DTP. So right now, if you see, you'll see that DTP's packet is extending over there. Wait for some time. Show me something. Start this guy. And meanwhile, I'll come to the right shot. See the DTP is sending, right? And if you open this packet, come on. If you see, domain is CCNA. Previously, it was not there, right? And now let's do one thing. If you want to disable, I'll do one thing. I'm just going to switch one. I say interface gives you slash 2 switch port, no negotiation. By default, negotiation is on. I say that no negotiate, right? Okay, command is ready. Command conflict between the negotiation and okay, switch port, mode, trunk, switch port trunk encapsulation dot one q, switch port mode trunk, and now switch port no negotiation. To disable the DTP, first you need to manually configure the trunk. That's the recommendation is that. Read this line. Switch port no negotiate. Prevent the interface, right, from generating the DTP frames. You can use this command only when the interface switch port mode is access or trunk. You must manually configure the neighboring interface as a trunk interface to establish the trunk name. So first you need to make a trunk and then you need to disable the DTP. First you need to make a trunk, then you need to disable the DTP. So see, now first I have from the trunk manually and disable the DTP. So if you see now, do show interface gig0/2. So not this one. Do show interface gig0/2 switch port. And you can see my negotiation of the trunking DTP is off. Same thing, let's gonna switch to an obvious guy. Switch port no negotiate. And now it will not. Okay, switch port trunking encapsulation dot will do. Switch port no trunk. Switch port no negotiate. And now if you see, I have also disabled the negotiation on this guy. DTP is off now, and let's start. Right, and if you have a look, one thing in the Wireshark, just wait for some time, 30 seconds, and if you see there's no DTP exchange will happen. No DTP exchange will happen because I've disabled the DTP. Okay, let's start this device. Okay, you can see that Are you able to see any kind of DTP over there? No. No DTP exchanging happening because I have disabled the DTP. Same thing. If you have a look right now on this particular interface, start capture. Right now, I'm setting the DTP on this particular interface. This part of the VLAN number one right now. By default, this I haven't configured any VLAN right now. Just forget it right now. This part, right? I haven't configured any VLAN. So this is the part of the VLAN number one, and he's sending the DTP packet on this particular interface. Go in the Wireshark and see. See, I'm sending the DTP packet. See the MAC address. What is the MAC address of this guy? So gig 0/1, right? Gig 0/0. Switch one. So DTP. So sorry. So interface gig 0/0 interface. The MAC address is 1500, right? And if you see, sending, right? Let's do one thing. I'll just go on this interface and I see that interface gig 0/0, right? And if you see the first one, do show interface gig 0/0 switch port, DTP is on over there. I'll do one thing. I'll make this interface as a switch port mode access, and DTP will be off now. See somewhere, yep. Did I configure no negotiation? No, no negotiation. You have to configure on the trunk interface, right? And on the access port, you have to configure the sorry, on the LAN side or the PC side, you have to configure the access. So this is the recommendation command, guys. This is the recommendation command to prevent the DTP attack. But this is not a mandatory command. Listen to me carefully. This is a recommendation command to prevent the DTP attack. But this is not a mandatory command to make a interface as a access port and to make a interface as a part of the VLAN number 10 and 20. Not mandatory. This is the recommendation to use this command to prevent the DTP attack. And now if you see, are you able to see any kind of DTP packet over there? No. Right? So this is the way that you can disable the DTP. Both have a different behavior, right? And so now let's do one thing. You can see that domain is already pretty configured over there. So BTP domain name is mass match and switch one. And I'll say that show interface one. I'll do show that interface Ethernet 0/0. Nothing is there. So show interface Ethernet E0/0. Auto is there. So let's configure this as a desirable interface Ethernet 0/0 with port condition switch port mode dynamic desirable and BTP domain name CC right. So this guy has a name CCNA and this guy has a name. So BTP status is a domain name is A, right? So if you see both the devices have a domain name different. This guy's CCNA, this guy's A. And if you see this interface, switch one, I have configured right, what we call it, this guy do show system and do show interface controls also. So dot one fit desirable is enabled, right? DTP is enabled over there. Desirable. So he's requesting this guy, hey, let's form the trunk. And if you see on the switch two now, switch two doesn't matter which mode will be enabled. Actually, this has to be from the trunk. So interface trunk. So interface is 0/0 switch port. So this guy's in also desirable mode, right? But I'm not able to form the trunk. Mode is on. I'm not forming the trunk. Reason DTP. If you have a mismatch of the domain name, right, we will not form the trunk. So in that case, you can do one thing, right? Better to disable the DTP. Even if you see, I'll do one thing. I'll try one more thing. I can interface if 0/0. No. Switch port mode. Now I have manually configured the trunk, and this is working over there. So you have to manually configure the trunk in that case, right? And if you're going to form the dynamic trunk over there, and DTP is enable, and domain name is match, so they will not form the trunk. You have to manually configure the trunk over there, and it's working now. So that's all, so interface trunk. Port has moved in the inconsistent state. So again, this side has formed the trunk, this side has, so issue is happening, right? You see, this guy is not forming the trunk. The port has moved in inconsistent. So you can do one thing. I'll better to you do interface. Let me do one interface each slider shut down and more shut down. Come on, wake up. And let's see. Am I forming a trunk? No. So let's better to do one thing interface 0/0 switch port no negation. Okay, that's not a big deal. I'll say that switch port mode trunk and switch port trunk encapsulation dot .q switch port mode trunk, right?
Law, don't form trunk with access port, right?
Of course not, buddy. Never.
Then I think on switch to you have enabled.
I have configured the manually over there now. It's working, right? So if you see do show BTP domain name, do show BTP, both have a different do show BTP status, right? This guy's a domain name A and this guy domain name CCNA, and I'm from the static trunk. So dynamic trunk will not. You have to, disable the DTP. You have to form the static web if you have a different domain name. And your production network, you have a different domain name, right? If you have a big network, you have a different domain name, because domain name is what BTP domain. I'm not going to explain well right now. It's a totally different topic. It is going to scope your right, not a scope. This word will be not suitable. You can see that speed control, right? Control the BTP packet in domain. Control the BTP packet. So the BTP packet will not go beyond the network, right? Throughout the network. I have to I want okay, this is my when the switch 1 will send the DTP packet, it will go to the switch 2, then switch 3, and then switch 4. That's it. No, it will never go to the switch 5. So I'll make this guy as a one domain name, and I'll make this guy as a one domain name. But what about the user side now? So you can form a dynamic trunk over there. You can form a dynamic trunk. You can form the dynamic trunk over there if you have a Cisco vendor, right? But whatever the user are sitting behind this guy, and you have to sitting behind, I need to make the trunk of this interface as well as. In that case, the domain name with this guy is CCNA, and this domain name is CCNV. And if I'm going to form the dynamic trunk, DTP trunk, it will not work. So better to you do one thing, go for the static trunk in this case. Because in the DTP packet, what happened? In a DTP packet, I'm sending the domain name information. So better to do one thing, disable the DTP or go for the static trunk. One more thing, it's a recommendation. Whenever you're forming a static trunk, it's recommendation to disable the DTP. Whenever you're forming a static trunk, it's recommendation to disable the DTP. Otherwise, what happens? Visitors of the bandwidth of this particular ring, right? No sense. Why are you sending the packet of the DTP over there? If I've disabled the DTP, right? Sorry, if I form the static trunk on this particular interface between this guy to this guy, there's no sense to send the DTP packet, right? So better to disable it. So guys, here is all about your DTP, and I'm done about the DTP pack. इससे ज्यादा नहीं है DTP में, खत्म हो गया. Now you can ask me any questions about the DTP.
What is trunk pruning?
Oh, that we'll see in the VTP part. It's a VTP pruning, not the trunk pruning.
Oh,
Hello, if we are not using DTP in the production, then where we are using it?
The reason is to use the DTP, like, in the Cisco devices. If you have a Cisco, you can configure it on a Cisco vendor only, not the different vendor.
Okay.
so we can see DTP in production network also, right? When we are using Cisco
Yes.
devices.
Yeah, you can use it. And even one more thing about the DTP, one minute. Like, I told you that you have to prefer the static trunk. The another reason is to from the static trunk. Take example, if you have a switch over there, right? And this switch has a connectivity with the other router, other server. So in that way, which trunk you are going to form? Static or dynamic? Static, right? Dynamic sense ही नहीं बनता ना भाई यहाँ पे. So there's a many reasons to, like, I'll give the preference to the static trunk, not the dynamic one. All clear?
No, even on Cisco devices, we have that drawbacks, right? Like uh, attacks and bandwidth utilization.
Yeah, that's why that's why people are using the static trunk.
Okay.
Anyone has a questions, guys?
No.
So here I'm done with the DTP, and what I'm trying to see that I'll upload this DTP file, okay, on the drive today. And what I'm asking, what I'm do is the query I have. Okay. Yeah. So tomorrow we'll do the VTP, and before the VTP, I'll discuss some part about the the VLAN states. Okay, that's not given in your book. I will have to discuss, right? That's a very important for the troubleshooting purpose, right? If you go for the high level of the CISA exam, right, they're asking this kind of things. So we'll go through the 30 minutes of the 40 minutes of the lecture of the DTP's, the states, not VLAN states, and then after that we'll go for the VTP, and then tomorrow is Wednesday, right? Okay. Thursday we'll finish the VTP as the pruning as well as the VTP pruning, and many more things are there. And then on the Friday we'll do one thing, we'll make a class and we'll finish the private VLAN concept, this part, right? So that on the Monday we can go for the spanning tree.
What
All good?
about VLAN?
Sorry?
Inter VLAN?
यार वो भी पढ़ाऊँ क्या? सीजन में नहीं पढ़ के आया क्या वो सब?
No.
ठीक है, मैं पढ़ा दूंगा, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, छोटा टॉपिक है. That's not a big deal.
Okay.
You can also read from yourselves. This is not a hard topic. The inter-VLAN routing is very easy one.
Oh. If you have any videos, can you please drop in the drive?
See, Vinay, I'll teach you. Don't worry. Video is very hard to find the videos of mine, right? Because मैं हर 10 दिन पे delete कर देता हूँ video. So drive पे पता नहीं किस folder में video होगा, मुझे खुद नहीं है, मैं पढ़ा दूंगा इससे अच्छा.
Okay.
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 All good, guys. So see you tomorrow and happy greatness. Sorry, good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.